Hi, Alon. Let's switch to English now. So it's really a great pleasure to introduce my colleague and also my friend Alon Kaplan from Israel. He's a music producer for Joy Tunes, and he also manages his own sound production company. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, Alon, he worked in over 80 games and shipped 80 games for games and film production and also media productions. And
Yeah, that's correct.
that's
Yeah,
not,
I was going to say that myself in a second.
you can again, of course. Yeah, I met Alan 2012, I guess, at GDC, and I'm always very interested in his projects. And the most recent one is Module War, an RTS game, which is very keen on developing. It's going into early access in a couple of months or something like that. And yeah, we're very glad to have Alan here because he's very talented and very good sound designer. So yeah, Alan, I may give to you and then enjoy your talk. And
Thank you
for
very much.
and for everybody else, again, please mute your microphone so that we don't have any differences. And Iris, please turn off your camera at the moment. Afterwards, when we get questions, you might turn again on the mics. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do
Okay.
this.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I'm very excited to be here. Really, I'm not just saying it's kind of amazing that we can do kind of stuff like that while we have the COVID-19 and we can still have presentations and learn from each other. So it's really exciting. Let's do something like that. Generally, if I was meeting you now in person, I would give like an option to comment while the talk. But for now, let's leave the question to the end. But if you have anything to write, there might be a point that I will ask you to write stuff. You can write in the chat of the Skype, and I will see that. So you can do that. Um, so yeah, I have a lot of stuff to show you today. And really, like the topic of music and sound in games is huge. I can talk about it for 2 years and it won't be enough. So I'm going to touch like a few very basic things. Like I don't know what's your knowledge about music and sound in general. So some of the stuff is going to be very basic and some less basic. And yeah, let's just start. We only have 1 hour, so that's not a lot of time for this huge subject. So I will just start and go ahead. Um, yeah, first let me share my screen. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Wait. Stop. Want to share it with sound. Yeah. Okay, if at any point there is any kind of technical problem, you don't hear me or you don't hear my sound examples, please write it in the chat and let me know. Okay, so first of all, a small, like a few sentences about me. For the last 10 years, I'm working as a composer and sound designer for any kind of media, video games, film, theater, commercials, and anything you can imagine. I'm also a speaker in conferences. I teach in 3 colleges in Israel. I teach music and sound for games. And I've managed to work on many different video games for all of the different platforms, from mobile to PC to Xbox, Nintendo, whatever you want. I've worked on it. I also have my own team that we're making an indie game called Model War that Gerald mentioned before. So in that team, I'm not doing only the music and sound, I'm also managing the team and doing all the marketing and production. Yeah, and I also work for the company JoyTunes, which it's an amazing company that we actually make apps for teaching music. So I'm part of the team that is working on the app Simply Piano. Maybe some of you heard of it. It's an app for teaching piano. And I'm working there as a musician, so I create a lot of the music content, songs and courses and everything. Okay, now I see that I don't see the chat when I share my screen. So let's see if there's a way I can also see the chat. No, I'm afraid not. So from time to time, I will check if there is anything there. Okay. So I will start from sound design, and then I will go to music, because it's two different topics. Everything is coming from the same world, of course, from audio. Okay, so first of all, when you create a sound, you want to create sound, like sound design for your game, you need to find a concept. And it's quite similar to concept in art, like if you want to have a steampunk or an adventure game in a world of fantasy, or a pirates game or sci-fi or whatever. So you also need to think about what kind of sound concept you want to have. It's not always the same. For example, you can have a pirates game, but you want to have the sounds like cartoon sounds. Or we want to have a very, very dark games in the visuals, but you want the sound to sound a bit less scary, to have it like more cute, and to have kind of a balance for that. So it's not always the same. Usually when I show this presentation, I asked people to give me all kind of examples for the few concepts I will show you, but now I will just jump to it myself. So for example, you can have retro kind of sounds that you all know from video games. That's like easy. So let's listen to a few of them just to get into this mindset. So just like a few retro sounds. Yeah, all of these. And you can have medieval sound effects. So when you look at this picture, or just think about medieval, not including fantasy, just medieval. So you have a lot of metal going on, and a lot of stuff like in the woods, and horses, of course, and all of that stuff, and different weapons. So a few examples for that, just like. And for every different weapon, you can have like a lot of different stuff that you can do with that weapon. So you can see like in this sound library, like for each weapon, you have different things that you can do with it, and different combinations, and all like raw material that you can later edit and make it sound more impactful. Okay, move to the next one. You have fantasy. So fantasy, of course, is including monsters and magic, which magic is something that, of course, it's not existing unless someone want to tell me something else. But magic is something that you need to create from your imagination. How will it sound? So it's a very interesting thing to do in sound design. And also monsters, which always sound a bit like different animals and stuff like that, but you also can do whatever you have in your imagination for these kind of things. So yeah, so kind of some magic. And we heard some goblins, dragons, whatever. Yeah. So it's always fun to make fantasy games in terms of sound. You have cartoons, which is a bit like retro, but not exactly, because cartoons was even before video games. We had all of these cartoons, TV shows, with all of the booms and stuff like that. So there is very like a familiar sound for that. Like if you think about it, there's like many sounds that you hear in all of these different cartoons, and they all came back from a sound sample library that was back then, that was called Hanna-Barbera. And this library had like a lot of the sounds that all of the cartoons used them. Let's hear some of it. Yeah, and let's see what I also had here. Film effects. Yeah, so cartoons, and of course sci-fi. It's another huge subject in audio design. You have spaceships and all of these different swooshes that doesn't really exist. and lasers and weapons, crazy weapons that you have there, and of course robots and aliens and everything like that. Here's many different kinds of lasers. Yeah, this is the generic laser. Different ambiances, an alien planet or something, or robots. So many different stuff. And last one, horror music or horror sound design. So we have already monsters that you have also in fantasy, but here sometimes you have like you want to create more scary ambiances, so you will take stuff that will sound like blood drops or a lot of echo, a lot of reverb in the sound that will make it more scary and deep. Let's see some of the examples I had here. And a lot of breeze, of course, you hear people breathing. And screams, of course, blood dripping. Which is just water, but yeah, you know, it makes the effect. Bone cracking. Yeah, okay. And of course, more in very different kind of moods. Whatever you want to make for your game or project, you will always need to think about it also in the sound aspect. Okay, so how do you actually define? Now I'll get start from the basics. So like sound have these three characteristics. Yeah, this is a hard word to say. And like if you think about the sound, the first thing that you will think about is the pitch. I mean, the pitch is the how high the sound is sounding like, or low. If you think about basses, you know, the low sounds, or high sounds, which are sometimes called treble, or high frequencies. There's a lot of ways to call it. But eventually, what is changing the pitch of the sound is the length of the wave of the sound and the frequency of how many waves you can hear at the same time, or like at a second, because the more high the pitch is, you can hear more of these waves shorter. So long one is the low frequency, low pitch, and high is a high pitch. You also have the loudness, which is the volume of the sound. So if you have like a soft volume, it means that the amplitude, like the size of the wave is small, and if it's loud, the size is bigger. So it's the same wave, but like the more bigger you have, you hear it louder. And you also have like the quality or timbre, which is like all kind of different things that you do with the wave. It's not always like a sine wave like this one. It can be like mixed of different variations, a lot of stuff that happen. This actually change like what you actually hear, and you can recognize, like think about the difference between a piano sound and a violin sound. So it's all like sound waves, and they have like maybe the same pitch in the same frequency of the pitch, but they have like a different timbre that make them sound different. Okay. And then you have the length of the sound, which in video games, for example, it's really important because a lot of time you want the sound to be in sync with something. You want it to be maybe very short if you're making a sound for a UI button, or you want it to be exactly in the length of an animation, or exactly in the length of a loop to work as a loop. So a lot of time in video games, we write the length of the sound in milliseconds, which every second have 1,000 milliseconds. So you can get very accurate with that. And yeah, it's recommended to be accurate as much as you can if needed. It's not always needed, because sometimes you only need to know the beginning of the sound, but you don't need to know the length. As I said, a lot of time you want it to be in a animation, so then you must have the animation before the sound in order to sync the sound to it. So yeah, let me show you some small example from a video games I work on. This is a video game called The Office Quest, and let me show you something. So wait a second. I was giving all of the animations of this game, and I needed to create the entire sound design for each animation separately. Like animation could be 10 seconds of a video, and I would create the entire sound for this 10 seconds, export the different animations as sound, and then they would put that inside Unity, the game engine, to sync it with the animation. So we didn't do like for each jump or for each event that happens in the game a different sound. We will do it like for each animation that could be like a few events. So you will see up here the names of the events of the animations, and I would like create a sound for them and send the team this video with all of the sounds already inside, so you can hear it. Yeah. And one funny anecdote about this specific scene. So what you will need to do here is you need to give each of these funny guys to eat what he likes to eat, and then you will be able to press on them, and they will barp in different pitches. As we said, there are different pitches for music, so each of them will barp in a different pitch, and you will have some kind of a clue about the order that you need to press on them, and they will play some kind of music. And if you manage to do that, you will get to see this scene. So let me show you. I think it's starting from here. No, not yet. Yeah, this was all to collect the flowers, of course. 1 second, sorry. So, yeah, as you see, there's a lot of different options of how you can sync for animation. For example, in the music part, I was actually creating the music first, and they made the animation according to the music. So sometimes it can go the other way. In video games, you also have a big topic in sound design, which is loops. You need a lot of time to create loops, especially in music, that you need them to be seamlessly, like the end of the loop will go straight to the beginning. It will sound like without any cut. It will sound seamlessly and perfect. So there's a lot of techniques to do that. And first of all, let's talk about the stuff. When does it happen? So for example, in a rapid fire, like a machine gun, you need to have it looping, or like when you have like a counting of points or money, for example, what I have here, this one, just like coins. So this is a loop that can work forever. And I actually recorded myself throwing all kinds of coins, and I did a lot of layering for that in order to make it work as a loop. And footsteps can also be a loop sometimes, because you need to have like a character walking in the game, and you want it to be repeating forever. So that's a different kind of a loop. And yeah, all kind of processes that people are doing inside games, walking, fighting, eating, these are loops. Yeah, so another kind of sound you have is a dynamic sound that changes according to what happened in the game. So for example, a car engine, like the faster you drive, the sound of the car is also changing, and it's not only changing the pitch, it's not only getting higher and higher in the pitch, it's also like can switch between different speeds of the engine, which is a different sound. So let me show you how it's done. That's just an example. One second. It was supposed to start. Okay, there it is. Oh, okay. Now okay, so what you actually heard is 4 different sound loops that were pre-recorded of the engine speed. So you have like the engine idle when it's just like working but not moving, and you have the engine in a low speed, medium speed, and high speed. And then you have the game sending this software, which is called F mode. You have the game sending the RPM, which is the speed of the engine. And according to that, it switched between the different sounds, so change the pitch. So it's doing the 2 things at the same time. Okay. Wait, we started over. Okay, so you have all kind of different sounds that you want to change according to the player. And sometimes you just want to have like a few different sound options that every time the player is going to play, it's going to be different. So we call that variations. And there's 2 kinds of variations actually. One is random, that every time that you do perform an act, you will get a different sound. Maybe some of you remember the example from the old game Warcraft, that every time that you will press on a unit, you will hear him saying something different, like this.
Your command. Yes, sire. Yes, my lord.
So that was just like fun to just press them again and again to hear different. At some point they will get angry on you, and when they say stop poking on me and stuff like that, and it was very funny. And you have sounds that every time it's different, but in an order based. Like for example, if you collect coins, so you have like this bleep 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 that all the time change the pitch, which give you more satisfaction that you collect a few of them. So that can be very cool. And you do that a lot in video games for coins and for points collection and multiplies, you know, like if you could do the same thing a few times in a row, it always works to have like different variations of the same sound. In order to do that, you actually need to do that in code, because you need to have, like, for example, a list of 5 sounds. You need to program inside Unity, for example, that the game will know every time which of the sounds you need to do in the order. Or you can have a different software that knows how to do that, that you can connect to the game engine. For example, F mode that I've mentioned. So you can put the sounds there and make it work from there in a list. So I'm summing for a second all of the different stuff that you have to build the sound in a game. So you have the volume, the amplitude, and the pitch, the frequency of the sound, and the timbre, the color of the sound. You have sound that you need to make synced for animations, and you have loops. You have dynamic sounds that changes, and sometimes you have different variations of sounds. Yeah, so let's talk about a few different sound types in games. So you have the GUI sound, of course. Every game have a game user interface, and you have the clicks, and you have the different pop-ups and mouse over, and all of these things need sounds. So every game can have a different sound for a click. For example, I have like so many click sounds. So there could be like a generic one like this one, or like a funny one, or a sci-fi one, whatever. So there's so many different options for that. Like if you say like just I want a generic sound, there could be like 2,000 options. They usually are short and super accurate and unnoticed. Like the player is not supposed to notice them. You have sounds that I call meta feedbacks, that are all of the achievements and power-ups, level up, all of these kind of stuff, like even winning a game or game over. So what I think is special in these sounds, that because they're a celebration sound, they always, not always, but most of the times they have some kind of music in them. It's not just like a sound effect. It's a kind of a small, short music. So here's a few examples that I did for different games. yeah, many different options for how you can give this feedback. And of course, you always need to think about your sound, mood, and concept, right? You want everything to fit. But something also interesting in these kind of sounds, if you also have a music for your game, you need these sounds to also work with the music, because this is music and also the music itself is music. So you want to think about doing these sounds in the same music, I would say scale, which is something I will talk about in a second, but you want to have them fit in the same world of the music of the game. Okay, so another type of sound you have is ambience, which is not the ambient music. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the sound of the background where the game is happening. You don't always do that. But if you will think about, for example, the game Angry Birds, the game itself doesn't have music. You only hear all of the ambience and sound from the game. Only the main menu have music. The famous music you know from Angry Birds is only from the main menu, and the game itself only have some background sounds and the pigs laughing and stuff like that. So ambience can be sometimes very important. You don't always want to use music in your game, and then you can choose, like, really tell where is the story happening with the ambience. It can be realistic, like just a street ambience or a forest or whatever, and it can be non-realistic, like I showed before, the alien planet or a spaceship engine or whatever. And there's a term called room tone, which is taken from a video, like from films, which is just the tone of the room which the scene is happening. So when you have like films, they sometimes takes after they finish to film a scene, they stay for a few more minutes in the room and record just the sound of the room, which is sometimes the air conditioner or a refrigerator or whatever there is there, and there's always some kind of a sound. So then they can use it between the different elements of the film. And yeah, when I work for different projects, I have many different sound libraries that have like sound recorded ambiences from all over the world that I can use whatever I need, like Australia jungle or a city from Brazil or whatever, like a China city. So I have like all of these different elements if I want to really be like specific for whatever is needed. Yeah, and these sounds always need to work in a loop because, you know, they end after a minute or 2 minutes and start over, and the player is not supposed to notice that anything started again. Yeah, and there's also voiceovers. So voiceovers can do three different things. They can do the storytelling, like have someone telling the story in a voice. They can give you information about what's happening, be like part of the user interface with the sound, and they can just be like the characters inside the game. This is always adding a lot of life to a game if you have voiceover. So voiceover is not that simple to produce. You don't only just like say, okay, I want this character to talk. There's a lot of different ways to say something, right? You can tell it like very happily, or you can be afraid, or you can speak very fast or very slow. And there's a lot of different elements to how you can perform a voice acting. So you don't just wanna like you sometimes will use yourself for voice acting if you cannot hire anyone, but sometimes you will want to hire like a professional voice actor that will know how to do that. So these are all of the steps in order to have like a voiceover in a game. You need to have a script with what you want the people to say. You need to do the casting in order to find the specific voice actors that will work for your game. You see a lot of game trailers that have this guy talking very like telling a fairy tale with a deep voice, you know, kind of a Morgan Freeman voice or whatever. And this is always super cool. So it's not easy to find this specific thing if you need for your trailer. But for example, if you take someone with, I don't know, funny voice, it won't fit this specific need. And then you need to have the equipment in order to record it. And you need to have someone to direct the voice actor and tell him exactly how you want it to be. And after you do that, you probably will record a few different versions. You need to choose each of the different words that we're recording. You will need to choose the version you want to need. Then, of course, you'll need to edit it in a sound editing software to clean the noise from the background or whatever. And you will add effects to it because you don't always want it to sound as the original. So here's an example I did for a game that I got, for example, these sounds.
All burp soldiers to your posts. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack by something adorable.
Yeah, and eventually I needed it to sound a lot different like this.
Mission command.
Sorry, like this.
All burp soldiers to your posts. We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack by something adorable.
So that's exactly the same actor, like I was just doing effects on it.
All burp.
It's the same dude. Or for example, the other one I just showed you, this one.
Potential error. Data inputs from Lenny and George inconclusive.
So this one I needed it to sound like a robot. So I actually had like some kind of a software, a plugin in my software that can change human voice to robot, and this was the result. Like
Mission commencing. Destroy the target. Search for power grid battery.
yeah. So there's a lot of different effects you can do on a sound, of course. Anything else I just called gameplay because there's, all of the different sounds that I show, different elements, we can just call them gameplay for that matter. And of course, there's the music. And yeah, if I sum all of the different types, you have GUI, feedbacks that are sometimes musical, like game over, power-ups, whatever, ambiances, voiceover, all the rest, and music. Let me see if there was any kind of question now or someone wrote something. Let's see. Okay, nothing. Okay, I will continue. Okay, audio file formats. So there's a lot of different files that you can work with for audio. And I will tell you which one is the ones I recommend. Maybe it will surprise you. So now I'm going to tell you a very interesting fact about MP3s and M4As, which is the ones for Apple. These files are very small, you probably know, but did you know that when you create an MP3, it always have a small silent part in the beginning of it? So this took me years to find out, actually. I never understood, like when I make an MP3 and I want it to loop, it always will jump because there's a small silence in the beginning of MP3s and also M4As. So you cannot produce loops that will work perfectly with this kind of files. What you need for loops is either of these two options. One is the OGG, and the second one is wave files. So in most of the games I work for that are in Unity, I work with OGG because OGG is actually the native sound format for Unity. So whenever you work with MP3s or whatever, Unity might change it by itself to OGG. But if it changes after it's an MP3, that's too late. It already have the silence in the beginning. So when I work for video games and I wanted to have loops, I will just create OGG files from my software. This is my recommendation for you, OGG files, because these are small files and still in a very high quality. But if you want to have like the perfect quality, we'll just work with WAV files, what we call uncompressed files, because these are like the top quality that there can be for sound files. But that depends on how big you want your game file, like your game build to be, because these can be very heavy, like videos. And these are all kind of different formats. You also have different file formats for quality. This bitrate is just like the compression rate of the file. So the higher it is less compressed and it's closer to WAV files. You can have stereo files and mono files. And you don't always need to have stereo files, which is like stereo means different from left to right. Because a lot of the sounds that you need in the video games need to be monophonic, which is only one source. I will give you even an interesting example. If you're playing a game in a 3D dimension, so every sound source that you hear, it's mono. It's coming only from one point. And if you will put a sound that is stereo in its originally, put it in a mono play location in a game, it will actually take the stereo and put them together into a mono. The game itself will do it for you. So if you think about it, most of the sounds that you need are monophonic. And why is this important? Because if you make a sound stereo and then it will push it into a mono in the game, it might lose some of the energy of the sound source. It might be less louder. And if you create it in a mono from the beginning, it will be in the same volume that you created it in the game. So think about when you make a 3D game with different locations of the sound, you always want it to be mono from the original. And the only thing that you want to put in mono is stuff that you put on the camera, like music. Music can be stereo because the player hears it in stereo anyway, no matter where he is in the game. And today also, of course, a lot of games have surround sound, so that's like more difficult and interesting because there's a lot of different elements for the sound. You can have like sounds with 6 different channels and not only 2 like stereo. So there's that. And you have like sample rate, which is kind of similar like, for the bit rate. Sample rate is, of course, the higher it is, it's better quality because there's more samples for each seconds, and same for bit depths. One more thing about it, if you're making a sound file mono, it will be half of the size for the file than stereo. So if you're making a game for example, for mobile games, you want the sounds to be smaller as you can, so think about that. You can always have like monophonic sound in a 128 bit rate and no more than that, and it will still sound perfect for a mobile game. So when I create sounds for a game, I will create first a sound asset list, which is just like, you know, a Google sheet with all of the information about the sounds. So there's a lot of different parameters, name of sound, type, what I told you before, like the different types. I will have an information line that I will describe the sound in my words. Like when I talk to a game company, we walk through each of the sounds, and we talk about like how is this sound gonna be exactly in the game. Because if you don't do this conversation, even with yourself, like if you don't write yourself the information, you will sometimes imagine something and it will be totally different in the game. So it's always important to do this with the sound designer, or at least with yourself. I saw there was a question. I will look at it in a second. There's also the length, as we said. You will want to know if it's going to be a loop or not, if you want to have a few variations for that, if it's going to be dynamic, changing in the game, if you need animation, so you need a link to the animation for that. And then the implementation part, which is very important. How is it going to be inserted in the game? Where is it happening in the game? In which level? And exactly why? And not why, like when. If you have a reference, you can put a reference for it. That's always interesting. And this is less important and skipping, but let's see what was the question. So Niklas asked, does Unity compress OGG files by itself, or do I have to do that by myself? I believe this is important for performance. So a great question. When you put a sound inside Unity, you have automatically you can see like the preferences that you made in the Unity. There's like the I would say that the default preferences. I think it doesn't compress it, but you can change it like the default preferences to always compress it to the OGG format. So you can play with these options inside Unity and see what's the default one. I don't remember if the default one is compressed or not. So check it out. Okay, I will continue. Ta-da. Starting over. Hello. Always summing the talk. Okay. Yeah, bear with me on sound. We're getting to music very soon. So sound. I'm skipping some of the parts. I will show you a few examples of the sound lists I worked with. So for example, this is a sound list I got for a game about asteroids and spaceships fighting, you know, like all the asteroid games. So I got like the different spaceships and different weapons and special weapons, sounds for the asteroids, of course, distractions, whatever, aliens, and then was the UI, and there was no information here about the sound, so I went with the production team of the game through each of these and talk about them for a few minutes and wrote here for myself like comments in Hebrew, so it doesn't matter for here. So I wrote the comments for myself to know exactly what I need to do there. Let's see another one. No, this is Hebrew. So this is just like me writing in Hebrew what I want to do for each of the sounds, and sometimes it's very funny because I would just like, it needs to sound like a pa or whatever, and that works. Okay, and also, okay, never mind. So a bit about the sound design process itself. So there's this term called Follies, which means like the sound that is not from the original source, but it's just a sound that is created in the studio. So there's like huge Foley studios for big cinema productions, and sometimes it looks like this. So they have like a lot of different floors that they can record the different footsteps on a desert or whatever. So they have this stuff, but I, for example, don't have room for these different floors, so I just use different libraries. But I do have like a lot of different Foley stuff that I collect here that can create all kind of different sounds, whatever. Like if I need to, I don't know, use break a glass, so I can record that, or whatever. There was a time that I needed the sound of stone moved from the floor, so I just like went out of the building, took a stone from there, came back to the studio and recorded myself like moving the stone or whatever. So it's a lot of fun. There's of course field recording that you can use a lot of different recording equipment and record whatever you want in ambience or whatever. I once was serving the army and I took a recorder to record the sound of the artillery firing. I'm not kidding. I actually did that just to see how it sounds afterwards. So you can always like keep like a recorder with you and record sounds, whatever. And of course there's sound libraries. So there's a lot of sound libraries that you can find online. Some of them are free, some of them are costing money. I just heard that the BBC channel just released 6,000 sound effects for free from their library. So if you look for BBC sound effects, you just have a present waiting for you, which is kind of cool. Here's a free sources, free sound. There's a lot of different ones. Of course, not free. You can always find from Audio Jungle, whatever. And there's also these two cool ones. You can do like a screenshot of this presentation. That these are just tools that actually can help you create sounds on the spot from just an online tool and export it into a file. So that's very cool. Okay, moving forward, softwares. You have a lot of different software that you can create. You can play with the, of course, edit it like you edit a video. You can change the volume. You can do different effects. Play with frequencies, with an equalizer, and of course layer different sounds together. So a bit about implementation, how you put the sounds in the game engine. In Unity you have a mixer that you can create different channels and route the different sound elements into different channels, and then you can do like that every time there is music, the sound effect will be less loud or whatever you want to do with that. So as I said before, you can place the sounds inside a 3D location in a game, and the game engine itself, we know how to change the sound according to that. Like you will hear it from your left and from your right or whatever. And you can also have reverb zones inside the game engine. So this is very cool. You can, for example, put inside a cave, you can put this box in Unity and tell it like, make everything there sound like inside a cave with the echo of a cave. And then when you will walk with your character there, you will hear yourself with an echo. So this is very cool. I use a lot of the time the software F-Mode for creating sound. It can connect into Unity. And what's cool about F-Mode and DoubleWise is they are both free for indies. Unless you're making a big amount of money from your game, or your game budget is like big, you can use those for free. And even if you have a lot of money or budget for your game, it's still not a lot to pay for them. So it's kind of cool. And the Unity store have a lot of different other cheap software that you can buy for audio implementation. When I work on a game, even if it's a small casual game, I will always have an implementation meeting. I will not just send the files to the team and tell them like, just enjoy yourself, put the sounds. I will meet them and we will put the sounds together in the game so I can hear how it sounds in the game and see if anything needs a final change. So that's always nice to have Audacity ready for like small changes at the end. Super cool to have that. Yeah, we're gonna skip that, and I will go fast to music because I still have a lot of stuff I want to tell you, and I want Gerald to tell me, or Michael, if we have a bit more time after 7 because I have a lot of stuff still I want to show. So, 1 second. Yeah, I'm gonna skip to music and show you a bit how I create music for a game, the process. So first of all, I get a reference for what kind of music people want for the game. And this can always sometimes be very hard to find the exact reference. I just had now a game that for 2 months we were just looking for references to see what will feel good with the game. The perfect way, of course, to test it is just put the gameplay in front of the music that you are testing as a reference from YouTube and see if it works together. Really easy, you don't need to do anything more than that. Just put the music, put the game on and see if it works together. So in this example, I got this reference as they told me what they want. So this reference is from the TV show Happy Tree Friends, a crazy TV show. And this was the picture I got from the game, like we want to have a funny monsters game. It was a tower defense. And the first thing I will do after that is I will actually do the entire composition, sometimes with just one instrument, like a piano or whatever. And if this is something that already show what I'm gonna do is the entire, like the full scope of the music, so it can be, it can work like that. Sometimes one instrument is not enough to show what is your intention. But at this point, I could send this to the producers, and they said they like it, and then I could move to the next level. So this is how it sounded in the beginning. Okay, so just piano, fun piano. And the next part was instrumentation, which is I took this piano and I added a lot of different sounds from an orchestra or whatever I want. And I would do everything at the computer. I don't need to record instrument, just like everything inside my Cubase software. And it sounded like this. Okay, after this got approved, so the next thing I will do is live recording. So for this game audio, I didn't do so much of live recording. I just like did recorded myself singing. So I had in mind that I'm gonna make like my voice sound funny, but the beginning it sounded like this. La 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 la. So I actually recorded myself 6 times because I wanted it to sound like many different creatures sounding singing together. So the next part is mixing, which is checking all of the different elements of the music that they will be in the exact volume that I want them to be compared to each other, like the drums and the bass and my singing or whatever, and do all kind of different effects on them. So for the singing, I did change the pitch for my singing. Of course, maybe you've guessed that I'm gonna do that. And I did all kind of different echoes and reverb and effects for that. So that's the mixing part. And after everything sounds great together, there's the mastering part, which is kind of like taking the master sound of everything and have a few more effects on it to process it in order to make it sound like the best it can be for any platform that is going to be used. So for example, if I know this game is going to be on mobile, I want like most of the people won't hear the basses because the mobile speakers don't have basses. So sometimes you will not even use the basses in the music because you know they won't be heard. Or maybe you will do some kind of a special trick to make it sound better for an iPhone. So that's just an example of mastering. Let's hear the final result. This was like the ringtone of the company for months after. Okay, so as I said, you can find references for music in any place you have. Like YouTube is very useful for that. Films, Audio Jungle, it's very cool because Audio Jungle actually let you download most of the music they have just for using as a reference. You will always find a sound, hear these women saying every few seconds, Audio Jungle, but you can still use that just as a reference. And later on, if you want, you can buy this, because it's also very cheap to buy music from Audio Jungle. And you always want like to have references. I hate when a client come to me and tell me, I trust you, I know what you can do, just do whatever you want, I don't have any reference, because it's not really working like that. Like if I will do whatever I want, a lot of the time it's not what the client will love eventually. And sometimes like he don't know exactly what he likes, but after he hear a few things, he understand what he wants. So it's always better to just have a reference, or like even 10 different references to start with. When I do the composition, I separate the stages as I showed you before, like the composition, instrumentation, recording. I do everything different, like in a different state. And I don't like get stuck on finding the perfect sound when I'm doing the composition, because I'm now focusing on composition. Don't call for the sounds. I will do the sounds in the instrumentation part. Yeah, we'll skip that because I want to get to more stuff. And this is kind of important when you work with a sound designer or a musician. You want to give them a feedback that will actually help them. And a lot of the time you don't know exactly how to say that, because you can say, I don't like this music, but I don't know why. It's maybe we'll say just like it's too blue, or it's too purple, or it's too I don't know, sound like jewelry or whatever. And that doesn't help anyone, right? So there's ways to know how to give best feedback for musicians, whatever. First of all, is just like try to understand what is the problem. Maybe you don't like the instrument. Maybe you don't like the guitar or the singer or whatever. Maybe it's too slow, or maybe it's too fast. And that's a conversation you can have with a musician. Like you need to have a conversation in order to know what to fix. You can say, I don't like it, but I did like the drums, so keep the drums. I don't like anything else but the drums. So then you have like progressions, because you can keep the drums because you like the drums or the tempo, but you don't like the other stuff. Or you like the melody, but you don't like the instruments, whatever. And then of course you will want to find a new reference that will work better. And the composer needs to have zero ego, because a lot of time you just throw your music into the trash, and that's okay. And what's nice about it is that in a video game, if I create music for video games and the game team do not like it, I can always save it for later use. Maybe there will be another production that I can use that music. So nothing really goes to the trash forever. I already have like a folder on my computer with hundreds of unused music that maybe one day I will use, or maybe I will sell them in a library online, whatever. So yeah, as I said, trash can your future millions as a musician. For composition of stuff like for media, you don't have time to wait for muse, you know, like you see these musicians in the movie going in the street and waiting for the muse. You don't have this privilege because you need to have like 10 minutes of music for tomorrow ready, and you cannot wait. So there's a lot of stuff that help you. You can actually walk outside and after a few minutes come back home, and maybe you will have like a new spirit and ideas. And something that works for me is try different instrument every time. And like each music instrument gives me a different inspiration. So this is a photo of some of the music instrument I have at my studio. And sometimes I will try to do something with a guitar or with an accordion or whatever. And another method that works for me for creating new stuff is just copying something that exists. And after I copy it, I can take it to my own direction. So that always works. Never give up, of course. It's not something that you can do. Let's see if we had questions. No, I'm continuing. You know what? You can start to have questions now, and I will look from time to time, but I will also continue because I want to show you more stuff. Okay, 3, 4. No. Okay, where is this? Okay, it's already open. Yeah. Okay, so in order to give you a few more deep understanding in the music in video games, I will sometimes compare it to music in film, because we all know films, and so it's easy. And this is like a few parts that I took for today from a big presentation I had about it. I did a big research about the difference between music in films and music in video games. And I actually was doing it as a keynote in a conference in Munich about animation and video games. I forgot the name of the conference, but that was like 2 years ago, before all of the COVID-19 started. Anyway, so yeah, I will see the questions in a second. So there's the spotting session, which is something that you always do in a film. You meet with the film director and talk about where you want the music to be. So there's what they call the 5 whys. So you need to think about for each part of the game. Does it need music? Where do you want the music to be in the game? When does it start? Is it always starting in the beginning of the level, or it starts in some specific occasion in the level? Of course, what kind of music, or for games, music systems, like if it's going to change according to the player. I will talk about that in a second. And yeah, we will play it and record it, of course. So this is like a quote from D.B. Cooper, which was a voice actor in BioShock 2 and Hearthstone and many other games. It's much harder to write music for games, I think. Film music helps with the emotional impact of an event that is usually less than 180 minutes long. Game music must accompany and entertain through possibly hundreds of hours of adventure and engagements. So when you create, for example, the music for the first level of Super Mario, think about how many times people are going to hear this. It's like hours and hours that you will hear the same thing, and it needs to still be fun at 1,000 times you hear it. So that's a big challenge. And the music length. So a film is, you know, the top of it, like longest films are 3 hours sometimes, and like each scene is up to 10 minutes. But game music like can be like hours of music. Like if you take big games like Fallout and stuff like that, so you have like, I don't know, 6 hours music for the game or even more. And the different game scenes can be anything from 10 seconds to a few hours, like depends on the level length. Like if it's a bubble shooter or whatever, it's very short. And another quote from Robert Holmes, a friend of mine. He was the composer for Gabriel Knight series, if you know this one. One other key the need for evolving dynamic additive music like games have now is that often in games you're creating music while the art and programming is in development also. I usually just had a scene sketch or a character sketch to work with. In a film, it's all done after the fact, responding to the finished visuals or at least initial edits. So this is very true. Like when you have when you work on a music for video games, you don't need to wait for the game to exist. It's always nice to have a gameplay to compose for, but you sometimes just get like a screenshot. This is how the game is going to be. Write the music for it, because this can also spare time. You have more time to do that. Now let's check the question we had. Is there any literature you could maybe suggest to someone who wants to get more into sound design in games? Wow, there's so many of them. There's one very famous one. One second, I will show you. It's called Game Audio. One second. This one, it's called Game Audio by Aaron Marks. This is the one. You, of course, have online versions for that, like PDF versions and whatever. So this is an amazing book, and they update it all the time, and it comes with like a lot of different examples. So I really love this one, and there's a lot of different ones that are all the same, like they're all like talking about the same topics in all of the games. So I won't recommend like buy a few of them, because some of them are really the same and exactly like this one. What else? I also have a book called The Sound Effects Bible, which is a very cool book if you want to how to create different sounds, because each page of this book has like an explanation of how to produce the specific sound. Like you have a page how to record a fire shooting, or a page how to record to create the sound of lasers. Like each different page showing you how to do a different sound. So super cool. But you know, of course, nowadays the best feature is YouTube. Like you can write in YouTube how to record a monster sound, and you will find like dozens of examples of sound designers doing that. So very cool. Shift F5, yes. Another quote, just from a random guy I saw in the forum. Video game music seems to be written in more of a pop way than the pseudo-classical tension and release directly scene-enhancing angle of film music. You can't make overly dynamic or adventurous video game music because it could be totally out of sync from what the player is doing. But at the same time, it's less subservient to a visual narrative. What it means is, for example, if you have like Super Mario, again, this example, I like this one, you can't make the music change to suddenly be very tense, because the game is staying in the same mood all the time. So you need to be in the same mood as the game, unless the game itself also is changing the mood, and then it's the perfect time to change the music, which is very cool. And if you think about it, also in Super Mario it happens, because if you're running out of time in Super Mario, suddenly you hear the same music 2 times faster. So they already did that in Super Mario. A friend of mine, Ariel Contreras Esquivel, also a very good video game composer, said, films allow me to write deeper narrative kind of music and enjoy the fact of scoring against visuals in a timeline of video games. Instead, give me the freedom of adaptive music, which can change according to what's happening in the game. So, as I said, like for a film, you write always the same music one time, doesn't change, and it's synced. In a game, you have like non-linear, atmospheric, can be looped, keeping the same mood or changing according to whatever. And this is a game I've worked on called Judgment Apocalypse Survivor Simulation. It's a game on Steam. It was quite successful, and we did this kind of score for it. We had like one battle theme that every time you were in kind of like scavenging around, you have this battle theme, but it had 3 different layers of music. You had the music for the menu, you had 3 day themes and 2 night themes, because there was a day and night cycle. When you were building your town, you had like randomly between these musics. And we had like different sound effects. So now I will show you how I did this as an example in F mode. This is F mode, what I told you about, that allows you to create adaptive music and sound effects, and actually had 4 different layers of music for the battle part of the game. So the first one was when you were just looking around and trying to find the enemies. So you will hear this layer. And the second layer, this one, you will hear it when you are getting close to the enemies. Like it will tell you with the music that you're getting close to the enemies, which is kind of cool because only the music will actually tell you something in the game. And then when you're actually in the battle, you will hear the third layer, the music, this one. And sometimes randomly, you will always also hear this one. So this one works together with the third one, just like randomly, because to make it more interesting, sometimes you will hear this one. So in the F mode, I have this parameter that I get from the game. It's connected to Unity. And this changed the volume of the layers. You can see like when I move this thing, it actually changed the volumes on these things, you see? So now I will play it for you, and I will change here the parameter, and you will see how it moves from a layer to a layer in real time. This is actually how it's happening in the game. So starting from layer 1. Now you can change the beat. Go back to 1. So 3. I did the transition quite fast now, so it wasn't exactly how it is in the game. It's in the game. It's like a DJ. It takes like lowering the volume down and then putting the next one up, so it will be like a good transition between them. But yeah, this is just an example how it works in the game. So this kind of a technique is called layers, that you have like different layers. It's called the horizontal technique, that you have like different layers that you add on top of each other in order to change the mood of the music. Okay. No, I didn't start it again, right? I did. There we are. Okay, so another thing that you have both in film and music is thematic use of the music. What I mean is like you will use the same music for a lot of different scenes in the game, but every time you will change it a bit to fit. So this is the crazy example of the music in Undertale. You have like all of the different music cues connected to each other thematically. Like they all like have the same themes, but with a few different versions of it, and super crazy like what he did there. But also can have like different characters will have different music, or different location, different musics, and different eras or whatever you have, like in order to tell your story. And just an example I did a long time ago for a game that you are actually a skater inside a bar, and you need to get into the other side of the bar in the different level. So we had like each level was a different kind of a bar. Like there was like a cosmopolitan bar, or a very like heavy bar. Like there was a Latino bar. So we had like the same music but different versions for each of them. Yeah, I will just skip this example for now of lack of time. Maybe I can show it later. Also in terms of genres, like music today in games have all kind of music, like there's no difference. But one time, like if you take the 80s, all of the music there was 8-bit, right? So it's also it's a bit affecting the games today, because a lot of games today still want to go retro and do 8-bit music for the games, and that's super cool. You won't see that in movies. You won't hear like a film score with 8 bits. That's not like something that happens a lot. This I was talking about. Something else that you can do also in video games, it has a playlist of music in the game, like for example in GTA, that you can all the time skip between different radio channels and choose your music for itself. So that's kind of cool, and you won't see that anywhere else beside games. Just to have like a playlist of music. Even in Fallout, it's kind of cool because you can choose between the playlist or the actual score, the classical score. Like you can choose between two of them. Loops that we also have only in games that we talked about, and of course adaptive techniques. So as I showed you, there is like the layers option that you can have, like I show in the judgment game, but there's a few other techniques that people are using. The interactivity is the part that really intrigues me the most. Writing music in anticipation of what someone may or may not choose to do. So that's Jeremy Nathan Taser, also a very cool composer for video games. So there's the layers option, what I show you, and there's cues, which is horizontal, which you have like a lot of short different cues that you go between each other, like according to what happens. So think about very, very short cues, like of 10 seconds, that every 10 seconds the game engine is choosing be the next cue according to the story. So this can be like very interesting to have complicated systems of music connected to each other according to whatever happening in the game. Maybe your HP is changing it, maybe your experience point, maybe the amount of monsters in the screen, and a lot of different elements can change the music. There's also stingers, which is I will call them short music cues that goes on top of the music score. Think about this, you're going around in your level and looking for this special weapon. And when you find this special weapon, you will of course hear the power up sound of taking this weapon, but it's not you can also make it more interesting if you make the sound effect when you take this weapon in sync with the music. Like it will take the sound effect to start exactly on the beginning of a beat of the music, and that will be more interesting. So a lot of video games do this kind of stuff. They have like different stingers that change according to whatever happened in the game. And this is a screenshot from the software called Elias, which is another software for creating sound design and music for games. Another thing that you see in a lot of video games is musical levels, which I really love this. You know, the known ones is, for example, Guitar Hero and all of these games that the music is synced with the game. Everything is happening at the same time. And if you don't play according to the game, the sync, you will die or you will lose the game. So it's very cool. And my favorite example of this is Rayman Legends. Let's check this out. If you don't act according to the music, you will fade a level. Yeah, super cool example. Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, I think we're done for the presentation. Of course, as I said, I can keep go and have so much more stuff I would be happy to show you. But yeah, now I think it's a question time. So thank you very much until now. Feel free to ask any question, both voice or chat.
Well, first of all, Alon, thanks very much for this very thorough and intriguing talk. If there are any questions, you can switch on your microphones, you can switch on your cameras and just ask Alon so that he sees also to whom he's talking.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Yeah, and if there are questions in this room here, I will ask them to you. Any questions here?
Maybe you can show me the people.
Then I have to turn around the computer and maybe it will break.
Okay. No, I don't want it to break. Yeah. If there won't be any question, I will just show you a few more examples from stuff.
Well, I have one question here.
Did he record by himself a lot, or did he use or do you use database or libraries?
So the question is, do you record most of the sounds in the music, or do you use more database, and what would you recommend to younger students? Should they use more databases or try to recording themselves?
So myself, actually, I'm not ashamed to admit that I actually use most of the stuff that I have from the computer and not record so much, because I have like so many sound libraries. I have like more than 100,000 different sound effects on my computer. So I rarely need to record new stuff. It's not like if you, for example, I just give a short example. If you need to record a sound of sheep, so it will be funny to just go and record a sheep because they all sound the same, and you don't need to have a unique sound of a sheep. But if you want to create something unique and want it to be special, you will maybe want to record it sometimes. But not only that. Like, there's a lot of ways to create unique stuff from existing sounds. So I would say that a lot of sound designers go and record everything from scratch, and I don't think that is the best way to do it, because you don't have a lot of time when you work on a video game. So you want to make stuff fast, and the fastest way is to just have a sound that you can edit into your computer. So you can choose whatever you want works for you. But as for me, I don't record a lot of sound effects. That's for sound effects, actually. Music is a different question, because music, you can make everything sound perfect from the computer. There's so many like sample libraries, it's called, that create different sounds. Violin that was recorded, or a piano, or whatever. You can have that all in the computer. But if you record even one live player and mix it together with the sound from the music libraries, it sounds 10 times better. That's like some kind of a secret that a lot of musicians know, that like, for example, if I have an orchestra that I make everything in the computer and only add like one violin player, and I do that and mix them together, it sounds like super live and way better. So that's like kind of like the balance between recording a full orchestra, which is very expensive, to record just one player. But actually, there's also something very cool today. I don't know if today, but before the COVID-19, you could have like very cheap orchestras all around the world that you can record online. So I actually hired an orchestra from Prague a few times, and I only paid them like between $100 to $200 or euros for 10 minutes of their time. And in 10 minutes of their time, like, I'm talking about 50 players, 50 musicians, like in full orchestra, I can record them for 1 minute of video game music. So like, think about it. If you have like an orchestra that costs you only $200, 50 players, and you can do like something that would sound like super. So this is also an option. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Man sprach ja über diese BBC Sound Library, die veröffentlicht wurde. Wo kriegt man die her? Also ich kann mir, also ist die auf der BBC-Website oder wenn ich jetzt nicht die ganze Zeit rumsuche?
Okay. Yeah, there's the question, where do we get the BBC sound library? Can you link this, or is there a link there, or how do you?
Yeah, actually, I had a friend. 1 second. I will stop for a second the screen sharing. I had a friend that sent me the link today. I will put it in the chat.
Perfect.
In a second. Where was it? Yeah, it's actually sound very cool, right? And I also know that the GDC conference, they release a GDC audio bundle every year for free with many sounds. So I will also try to find it for you. This is the BBC one. And let's find the GDC audio bundle. Yeah, there it is. Every year they have a huge sound effects library for GDC. This is from the 2020. Here is the link.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Don't be shy, people. Quirin, just talk.
Typing.
Yeah. Any other questions here?
Let's wait for the typing.
Well, otherwise, I would be interested, Alan, what do you find more challenging, writing music for video games because of the interactive nature and the adaptive sounds and also the the ambient sounds you're using, or well, or is it more complicated to write for films, or maybe also what's more interesting to you?
I like both. Really, it depends on the project. Like if it's an interesting film or boring one, like it really depends on the project. So everything works for me. And what I really like in this profession is it's always different. So that's what I like. It's like sometimes I will write like Irish music and African music or whatever. I don't know, traditional classical music. So this is what I like. It's every time a different scope and whatever.
Okay.
And I think like in terms of challenge, the important part is to first understand what the needs of the game. Like not all of the games need to have adaptive music. Like a lot of students want to take the game to the next level and say, we will have adaptive music with an orchestra, and it's not always fitting. Like you need to think what is best for your game. So I think this is also a challenge, like to understand what is the right thing to do for the game.
Okay, thank you. Quirin raised the arm. Please just ask your question.
Yeah, my microphone didn't press. Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, my question is, because I was doing this also some years ago, like on random events, I took my phone and just recorded audio, and I'm not really sure if it even makes sense because of the quality or something, but should it be is it maybe a good improvement for me as a student to just sometimes record stuff to get a feeling where I get a specific sound file from, like because sometimes you create stuff, as you said, like laser or sci-fi stuff that doesn't really exist, but I need a reference, right? I need something.
Right.
So to improve myself on the whole topic, should I just record random things, like each day, just one random audio file, and then just to like get a feeling for what sounds like something else, and just try to name it?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a few parts in what you ask. Like first of all is the when you said like when you record stuff, you can listen and see what they sound like. So when you record something, most of the time it will just sound for what you recorded, but the magic happens afterwards when you start to play with it. Because you take just, for example, like a ship sound and you put it in your software Audacity, and you start to have like this list of, I will show you it live now. One second, sharing my screen. If you put a sound inside Audacity, you will have a lot of different effects that you can do with it. And that's like kind of an exploration. Like you don't know what will happen. You start to do all kind of, I don't know, a wow effect to it, or reverse the sound and stretch it. When you stretch a sound, there's always kind of effects, artifacts that happens, and you never know what will happen. So you will maybe spend like half an hour playing with your ship sound and make it sound like a spaceship, or make it sound like a crazy monster or whatever. And that's a lot of fun, and also like very a lot of like, I don't say it's luck, because the more you do it, you know better how to reach your result. But that's a lot of the sound process. Like you take the raw material and you mix it and play with it around to get to what you want. So that's a lot of the practice. So I would say like keep recording sounds for fun, also with your iPhone or whatever you want. It's not a super bad quality. Maybe you will have a lot of background noises, but you can also clean noises. You have like effects for noise reduction inside Audacity that you can do, and then you can have like a better quality just from that bad sound. Like think about that. There was like very famous albums for music that were recorded inside just like a home studio, like a room studio. For example, the entire Billie Eilish first album was recorded in her living, like in a room, like in a bedroom. So that's crazy. Like you can do everything today with very bad quality microphones or whatever, and you can get to amazing results. So yeah.
Thank you.
Sound files, or maybe all the sound effects, to make all the sound effects, or to making good game music?
Okay, there was one question here, Alon. What takes more time to make the sound effects for a game or to make good quality composition music?
Music takes longer to create like one track compared to one sound effect, but so that depends on how many sound effects you have in a game. For example, the Office Quest where I showed you, we had 20 different musics, but we had like 20,000 sound effects. So I think it took me more time to do the sound effects, but one sound effect takes you anything between 2 minutes to create to 2 hours. Like if it's a very complicated sound effects, maybe it will take 2 hours with 10 different layers of the sound effects. But music production can take you anything between 2 hours to months. So that depends on like the complexity, and there's no exact answer for this question.
Okay. Any other questions? Niklas, please.
Yeah, I have a more personal question, just to satisfy my curiosity. Do you have any dream project you would like to work for, or any kind of goal you want to reach eventually?
Yeah, that's a cool question. Well, I don't have like a specific company. I would say I want to work with them. If you will ask me a few years ago, I maybe will tell you I want to work for a game for Blizzard. But nowadays, I just like want to work on big project as there can be, like project that will need full orchestra with 6 hours of music to record for it. So these are my dream projects. If you ask me, that can be either video games or cinema or theater. So everything that needs a lot of music, and but every interesting project for me is like it's a present to work on. Like even if it's the smallest indie game, if it has like an interesting concept and story, I'm really excited to work on it. Yeah, that's my answer.
Any other questions? Yeah.
And then there was silence.
And then there was silence. But well, if there are no more questions, thanks so much, Alon, for this very, very inspiring talk. And I hopefully it gave students some information on how sound works in games and how they can start this business. And yeah, thanks all for attending us online here and both in class. And hopefully we have another talk tomorrow. Also, there are 2 talks. Maybe Michael can tell you more about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody, and I will hand over to Michael for a second.
Thank you very much, and it was very interesting, very nice, very, very cool presentation. And you use 1 hour and 30 minutes, so thank you a lot. And für die Makro-Gamer noch vielleicht ein Hinweis für morgen. Um 19:30 Uhr starten dort 2 Webinare, also das erste von 19:30 Uhr bis 20:30 Uhr und von 20:30 Uhr bis 21:30 Uhr im Campus in Stuttgart. Und schaut rein. Im Campus in Stuttgart wird es ein Live-Event geben, nehme ich an, und bei uns auch, also in Leipzig. Und die plus 1000 XP Events werden weitergehen in den nächsten Wochen. Schaut einfach mal immer wieder rein. Wir werden euch informieren. Und vielen Dank nochmal, dass ihr alle da wart. Wir hatten jetzt, glaube ich, 50 Leute nochmal online. Und ja, das bestätigt uns auf jeden Fall, dass wir weitermachen mit unseren Events. Ja, vielen Dank, dass ihr da wart. Thank you very much, Alon. And hopefully we'll see you live here in Germany, maybe. That will be great.
Maybe. Thank you very much. I was really enjoying to talk with you guys. And also, I've left my email in the chat. If you guys have any questions you want to ask me later on, feel free. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Ciao, Jungs.